The Amityville Horror, 1979. I have surprisingly not seen this movie. I mean, it was everywhere when I was growing up. On TV, syndicated and all that stuff. Syndicated's probably not the right word. Anyway, no, I have never seen the original. I believe this is the original. Everything I've seen says this is the original. This stars James Brolin and Margot Kidder. Margot Kidder of Superman fame, and James Brolin, who is Josh Brolin, Thanos' dad. And, yeah, it's a classic, horror classic. How could you not see this movie? Anyway, I did tonight, and the only thing I could think of was Eddie Murphy's little bit on Delirious, where he's, like, talking about how... Well, here's what he says. He says, in the Amityville Horror, the ghosts told them to get out of the house. White people stayed in there. Now, that's a hint and a half for your ass. The ghosts say, get the fuck out. I would just tip the fuck out the door. I think he says, James Brolin looked in the toilet bowl. There was blood in the toilet, and he said, oh, that's peculiar. I would have been in the house saying, oh, baby, this is beautiful. We got a chandelier hanging up here, kids are playing outside. It's a beautiful neighborhood. We ain't got nothing to worry about. I really love this. This is really nice. Get out! Oh, too bad we can't stay, baby. Ah. Good. Classic. Anyway, Amityville Horror was great. What can I say? It's something, man. The scares were better than I thought it would be. From a modern standpoint, from someone who sort of understands what goes into a scare. There weren't like a ton of practical effects, but what they had was pretty good. Like I said here in the recommendation, half the horror is the dog. The whole time you're like, does the dog live? Does the dog die? And obviously spoilers for this old-ass movie. This 1979 old-ass movie. If you haven't seen it already, I do recommend it overall. It's great. It's a bit of a slog at certain points, just because it's like, where are we going with this? Are we gonna get through it? You know, that kind of thing. So, Amityville Horror is the story about George and Kathy Lutz, who move into this home, and apparently, prior to their purchase, there was a murder. I think the guy's name is DeFeo. He shot and killed his entire family and himself. And, you know, just your typical horror movie, haunted house, whatnot. Like, stuff happens. But it's quote-unquote based on a true story. So, take of that as you will. If that makes it so that it's scarier for you, then have at it. This is probably a perfect movie for you. There's three things going on in this movie. There's the house and like the family. There's religion and the questioning of Satanism, or like the prevalence of evil spirits and that sort of thing. And I guess the family would be the third thing. They split it into all sorts of different stuff. Oh, and there's a police sub-story too. Like, they're being investigated by the police, and that doesn't really go anywhere. So, like, why is that there? 70s movies, man. But as far as, like, older movies go, this is great. There were legitimate scary moments in there. My favorite part is, Kathy goes to check on her daughter, and she hears that her daughter Amy is singing the Jesus Loves Me song that every child in horror movies knows. And she's like, oh, what are you doing? Who are you singing to? And she says, I'm singing to, I think she said her name was Judy, her imaginary friend. And she's like, oh, well, where's Judy? There's nobody here. And she's like, well, she went out the window because you scared her. And so she goes, well, I better go check on the window just to make sure she's okay. And maybe she'll come back in. So Kathy, Margot Kidder, goes over to the window, and of course it's like pitch black outside. So she opens the window to like let her in and see what's out there. And there's these two, they look like Jawa eyes. And normally that's not so scary, but it was like a grunt, like a distinct grunt. It was really good. It was a jump scare, but it was an acceptable one because it was a very subtle sound effect that, you know, it was meant to scare you, it was meant to startle you, but it wasn't like a screamer. The difference in a good jump scare and a bad jump scare is something screaming at you in your face, or is it something that legitimately just unsettles you? And that was unsettling because it sounded inhuman, and yeah, it made you question what exactly that was that she saw out there, other than like an obvious Jawa. You know, that's probably what it actually was. Spoiler alert: the dog doesn't die, which is great. I read that George Lutz actually had issues with the 2005 remake with Ryan Reynolds, especially the part where apparently Ryan Reynolds kills the dog, and I don't know if I actually want to watch that now. So, I mean, it's practically the same movie, but with like 2005 special effects and I guess that the storytelling style. But the fact that she killed a dog, man, that sucks. I'd say the plot's alright. The weird 3 sub-story sort of thing is a bit odd. There was a lot of emphasis on the priest's side of it. And I guess according to historical accounts, there wasn't a whole lot of involvement from their priest. For the most part, from what I understand, is that their communication was over the phone, and nothing really happened like that. Whereas in the 1979 movie, the priest was constantly being haunted. It was like the evil was transferred over to him. It was haunting him. It was like a disease, which is totally a normal thing by horror movie standards anymore. Evil just follows you, especially after Ju-on the Grudge and the American Grudge remake. Just evil shit follows you no matter what. You can't stop evil. It's an unstoppable force. But by 1979, that's scary, you know? Most of the time, you got all these serial killers or slasher flicks where these are things that in the West you could potentially stop by like hitting them over and over again, or shooting them, or like putting them in the ground somehow, or setting them on fire. But this was a supernatural force that you just can't beat. And because of that, there was some question in this movie about secular religion. Like, I guess their priest was an educated priest in some way. They didn't actually talk about like what made him so different. He just seemed like your regular priest, but he was being berated by other church members, like senior church members, when he was trying to explain to them, hey, this is a satanic thing that's happening. There's a satanic phenomenon. And they're like, this isn't Satan. You're just going crazy. How many times have we gone through an investigation for Satanism and found nothing? Well, guess what, folks? Of course, you had to have the non-believers, quote-unquote, in an older horror movie like this. So, I mean, it's forgivable, but it's also really annoying. It really didn't seem like the priest side of things was all that necessary. And the police thing was really unnecessary. Because George and Kathy had, at one point, the front door blown out from the inside, and then the police detective came in, the sergeant came in and investigated, and he was like, there's no way that a burglar could have gotten in here. He didn't get in here through the basement windows, and all the doors were like blown out from the inside, the basement door and the front door. So I don't think you were burglarized, but just in case, I'm going to post myself outside your home right here. Well, the final night that they're there, he's not there. And the day before, he's investigating the priest, and nothing comes out of it. So, like, where was that? What were they building to? They kept showing him, like, following Kathy, or the priest, or the other priest that was trying to help the priest. It's like, it didn't matter. Anyway, this was great. I enjoyed it. I'm glad I watched it. Horror classic. I do recommend it. Yeah, I don't know why he stole a library book, but hey, you know, you gotta do what you can to save your family, right? That's it. We'll see how it goes. I don't think I'll be watching the remake, just because it doesn't sound appealing, and there hasn't been very good reviews of it from what I can tell right now. But anyway, if you haven't seen that Eddie Murphy bit, you should probably watch it. It's on YouTube. Have fun.